that's valid, conceptually valid, but I don't think 1 Corinthians 13:10 has anything to do with the completion of the Bible. I come from a cessationist background, and the way it was taught to us, and I'm still sympathetic to this in part, was they would go to 1 Corinthians 13:10. I'll start in verse 8 just for some context. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. Now, the way this was taught to me was that the perfect in the verse is the Bible. And so the argument was, when the Bible was completed, 100 years AD or whatever it was, when the New Testament gets completed, then all of these gifts are going to disappear. They're supposed to disappear, especially the miraculous ones. This is what we're talking about here, because we have no further need of revelation. So there was a deep association between the gifts and the production or validation of Scripture. Now, again, I said I'm still in part sympathetic to this. I don't think we have ongoing Scripture. I do think there's a link between the two, and so that's valid, conceptually valid, but I don't think 1 Corinthians 13:10 has anything to do with the completion of the Bible. I think that was a complete misreading of that text. To me, it's more obvious that it refers to the age to come, the ultimate experience of the new heaven and new earth. Then you're going to have these things cease. And I think that the reference to knowledge isn't that we all become brain dead, robots or something in the kingdom. I think that's a reference to, again, special spiritual knowledge, secret knowledge that would be associated with prophecy and stuff like that. I think that's a much easier reading of the passage. But that's how I was taught cessationism. The second argument would be, again, as I was growing up in the faith as a teenager, was the craziness, and I think a lot of it is craziness today, of the charismatic movement. And so that became sort of an argument by abuse. You see these wacky things go on in the charismatic movement, and surely that isn't biblical, spirit-empowered worship, plus the chicanery that gets associated with the fakery and all this sort of stuff. And so the movement itself became an argument against the wider issue of spiritual gifts.